This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of wheels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the Cinephile, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 332. I'm your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here, I'm doing my St. Patrick's Day celebration, number 7 of doing these. So since I've already finished off everything for the Leprechaun series, I had to figure out what I was going to do, and I decided to do the best rated, I believe, or the most popular horror film from Ireland. So what I'm going to do here is my pairing is going to be The Bride. This is one I got to go see at the Gateway Film Center, I believe on the opening night for that one. And then I'm going to be pairing this up with The Fantasist. I think that might be how you say that word. I'm not positive. But what we're going to do here is that the second one is going to be from, I believe, 1976. I know it's a year that ends in 6, but I'm pairing that up with The Bride because Jessie Buckley stars in that one, and she is from Ireland. So that's going to be how I do my through line there is an Irish connection between two. And then for my mini reviews, I'm going to be doing Dolly. Got to see this one at the Gateway Film Center as well. This is a 2025 film getting its wide release here this year. And then I have Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. That is my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch. Then I have a couple screeners here of Where Silence Lies. That one's not necessarily horror, but it flirts with the genre. And then I have Capture. And then I also got to, in celebration of Friday the 13th, watch the OG commentary on that one, so the one from 1980. And then I'm going to end up my mini reviews with a documentary of The Nightmare. So I don't think there's anything else I'm going to do here for this intro outside of saying thank you so much for listening. And I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And for my first mini review here is going to be Dolly. This is technically from 2025, getting its wide release here this year, and it's directed by Rod Blackhurst. who also co-wrote this with Brandon Weevil. This is starring Fabiani Teresi, I think if I Teresa, Russ Tiller, and Sean William Scott. Also give credit here to Max Lindsay. This is a body horror, monster horror film that is from the United States. I believe that's it. Co-production, yes. And this is currently sitting on a 5.6 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd with a synopsis beam. A young woman is abducted by a monstrous figure intent on raising her as their own child. So this is a film that I learned about while I was on the Dreadcast. It was brought up as one of the most anticipated horror releases for 2026. It does look like it did some festival stuff in 2025, making it technically a Voyage to the Fives watch, but it's going to be on my 2026 end of year list. Other than seeing the poster and part of the trailer at the Gateway Film Center, I did come into this one blind. So we have a very simple story. I've already kind of given the synopsis, which really kind of explains it fairly well. But this is a gross and brutal little film. It plays a bit like a slasher. The only problem is here that we don't have a lot of characters to kill off. If anything, this is more in line with something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's more like an exploitation film. You can call it Hicksploitation only for the fact that Dolly lives in the middle of the woods, and Dolly is being portrayed by Maxie Impaler, aka Max Lindsay. I believe she's actually a wrestler. So then there's also this character of Toby, who is portrayed by Ethan Sluppy, who embodies more of this when we get to actually meet him. Regardless, it has some effective elements. So I'm going to start then is I'll bring back up that it's light on the plot. It doesn't necessarily need the most complicated story, though. We have this deranged killer who is a large woman that wears a ceramic doll mask. Her mother has passed away, so she's completely snapped from reality. Wanting someone to raise now that she's alone, she has somebody locked up in another room, and the house is in the middle of nowhere and it's just dirty. Dolly mimics things that she sees and does this to take care of Macy, who is portrayed by Teresa. It's very degrading and just uncomfortable, and I appreciate that. So this does borrow heavily from others in the subgenre. Notably, there's a little bit here like Friday the 13th Part 2. There's a basement discovery that made me think of that. And there's also, TCM to an unhidden degree for both of these, but this doesn't ruin the film. The grainy, real film look was appreciated. A negative aspect is the inclusion of typical horror cliches like characters surviving improbable attacks and making bad decisions, which it doesn't ruin the film by necessarily any stretch. It just kind of caused me to roll my eyes a little bit here. So this explores themes as well as perverted maturity and nurture. Macy's internal conflict is a fear of commitment, as the reason that she's going up here is that her boyfriend, who is Chase, portrayed by Sean William Scott, is going to propose, and she doesn't know if she wants to marry him because he has a daughter, and so she's kind of going back and forth. But then Dolly forces her into a childlike role, leading to a loss of identity and autonomy. So this forces Macy into being the final girl to survive. Dolly is akin to a broken innocence figure like Leatherface from TCM. Their large size causes violence, and Dolly hides behind a ceramic doll mask. This invokes 1970s horror with its antique toys and rotary phones and doll-like setting, seemingly lost in time. Let's then shift over to discussing the acting performances. Teresa is great as our lead. She shows so much pain and fear, and I like to see the fight to survive here. Her performance plays well off Lindsay. The problem here is that with wearing a mask, everything she has done was with body language. Her imposing size fits the role. I like Scott for what they needed for set the stage. Sluppy works in his smaller role. I say the rest of the cast kind of round this out for what was needed. All that's left then would be the filmmaking aspects. This is where this excels. Shooting this on 16mm is excellent. The cinematography and framing to capture this isolated house that has fallen into disrepair is great. I also like the brutal effects that we get. It showed enough to make me cringe, and that's something I appreciated. So there's at least one moment of CGI that stuck out to me. Not enough to ruin this, but I just want to kind of bring that up. Other than that, the sound design and music worked for what was needed in building the atmosphere. So in conclusion, this is a brutal and effective piece of exploitation horror that successfully blends elements from subgenres like the slasher and exploitation films. While the plot is lean, it utilizes familiar horror tropes. The strength lies in its pervasive atmosphere of dread, the disturbing exploration of perverted maternal instincts, and the strong technical execution. Teresa delivers a compelling performance as the victim fighting for autonomy. The choice is to shoot on 16mm leads to a gritty, timeless quality that invokes perfectly the 1970s horror it draws inspiration from. Despite a few minor cliches and one notable instance of CGI, Dolly is a highly uncomfortable, well-crafted, and memorable horror ordeal that earns its place as a notable entry for 2026. So for me here, I, after this first watch, gave this one a 6.5 out of 10. My goal is going to be to actually check this one out again before the end of the year, but that's where I'm sitting at it for this time currently. Then I gave a rewatch here to Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby from 1976. This is directed by Sam Osteen. This was written by Anthony Wilson, and then they're also giving credit here to Ira Levin for the novel where the characters were created. This stars Stephen McHattie, Patty Duke, and Broderick Crawford. This is a horror film that's from the United States, currently sitting on a 3.2 on IMDb and a 1.8 on Letterboxd with a synopsis being, having been adopted by the madam of a southwestern brothel, a now adult Adrian must cope with the fact that he's Satan's child and not living up to his expectations. So Adrian in this one is being portrayed by McHattie, and this is one that when I was creating my movie collection, I learned that this was a sequel that was out there. If memory serves, this was a made-for-TV movie. I picked up a bootleg DVD from a film archivist. It isn't great in quality, and I believe I've only ever seen it that one time when I first got it. I've now given it a rewatch here as I scour into the 6's rewatches to kind of see where I was with it and give it a little bit more of a critical eye. So what I'm going to start is that Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite movies of all time. Part of what makes it work is the rich atmosphere of this young couple moving into this older building and not fully knowing if your neighbors are up to nefarious things. So this film doesn't do anything like that. That's not to say it doesn't have good elements to it, and I guess there's some things that are kind of in common here, but it definitely pales in comparison. So that's where I'm going to end the comparisons as well. So one of my gripes with my original watch was the story didn't make a lot of sense. This time around, it wasn't as big of an issue. So in this one here is that it starts off with Rosemary Woodhouse, who in this version is being portrayed by Duke. Now, she kidnaps her child from the cult, and they have her living on like a compound. And the child, she calls him Andrew. Obviously, his name is Adrian. And then running this cult, of course, is going to be Roman Cassavetes, portrayed by Ray Milland in this one. And then Ruth Gordon actually reprises her role as Minnie. So I would guess here is that Milland and Gordon did not have more than a couple days, so they shot what they needed to from them. And they do like voiceover that is overlaid over top of shots. I don't hate the idea that Rosemary is terrified that this cult is going to do to her son, so she flees. Then having somebody who is willing to raise the boy in accordance with what the cult wants makes sense, as I don't hate that. This obviously becomes a little bit of a road movie there for a stretch. So what's interesting is that this movie predates the follow-up novel that Levin did, as I believe it's The Son of Rosemary that came out in like the late 90s. And this also comes out before Damien Omen 2. And there's a similar idea here. This is more following the story of Jesus, with just doing it with the Antichrist. Adrian is expected to become this evil entity. His human nature, which I'm guessing is the strength from Rosemary, causes him to second-guess things. That doesn't stop the Cassavetes and other cult members from doing what they can to make him realize his plan. I do like this crisis of faith idea. Other themes include the betrayal by supposed mentors and protectors at every turn pretty much for Adrian. Only Rosemary is loyal and she is removed, leading to Adrian's loss of identity and question of faith. This ties into nature versus nurture debate. Rosemary wanted it to be good, but his nature may dictate evil, which Roman wants to allow it to kind of unfold without too much intervention. Finally, there's this terrifying concept of like secret societies, and which is wild here though is that it's the wealthy elites. This is not like some backwoods people doing like different things. It's less like Race with the Devil, where it's more like what we kind of see with like the Illuminati concept now. So let's go over to filmmaking. The rough quality of the copy I viewed makes this more difficult. I'd like to see a cleaned up version. This film being a curiosity and not great, I don't know if we'll ever get that. This is a made-for-TV movie, like I said. The budget limitations are evident. The cinematography and framing, though, were decent. The few effects that we get were fine. Adrian has an odd scene where his face is painted white and he's, like, dancing on stage while a band is playing. But the biggest flaw for me is that this is too long and it's slowly paced, making it tedious. Then let's go over to the acting performances. McHattie is an actor that I'm a big fan of. He's not given much to work with here. Duke showed good fear, but she's only in this for a short time. Same can be said for Gordon and Milland. And then we also here have David Huffman, who plays Peter Simon. This is Adrian's friend, who he's actually a Christian, and he actually wants what's best for him. Other than that, I thought that George Maharis, who plays Guy in this one, thought he was fine. The rest of the cast kind of rounded this off for what was needed. And this is including Donna Mills, who portrays a nurse named Ellen. But no performance truly stood out. Inclusion, this functions primarily as a curiosity piece for fans of the original film, exploring the Antichrist's coming of age with a familiar yet diluted set of characters. While the themes such as the struggle between nature and nurture, crisis of identity, and the danger of secret societies are compelling, this is hampered by its made-for-TV budget, uneven pace, and limited presence for its more engaging stars. It's an interesting historical footnote in the satanic horror subgenre that briefly predates subsequent narrative expansions on the subject, but ultimately it fails to capture the psychological dread that made its predecessor a masterpiece. So my rating here is slightly more favorable for it. Still not a great movie, but I give this one now a 4 out of 10. And then up next here, I have a screener of Where Silence Lies. This is technically from 2025, getting its wide release here in 2026, and I'll kind of get into that here when I do my intro. But so this one is directed by Nicholas J. Moore, and then it was written by Andrzej Kukulajek. If I mispronounce your name, I do apologize. This stars Alexandra Somias, Rich Graff, and Jennifer Makoma. This is a drama thriller film from the United States. It actually, there's no rating yet on, or no average rating yet on IMDb, and I actually had to help create the Letterboxd page. So the synopsis: after a brutal massacre leaves a powerful family dead, the sole survivor becomes the focus of a high-pressured interrogation where every answer only deepens the mystery. So I got the chance to see this thanks to the director here of More. It sounds like this is doing a limited theatrical run soon, so he wanted to see if I could help out getting the word out there. So this premiered at the Hot Springs International Horror Film Festival. Now, this isn't horror, but there is some crossover here since this is a thriller and it's emulating some true crime. So this sounded interesting, and especially since I enjoy, films like this, so I agreed to give this one a watch. So what I'm going to say here is, for the most part, this is contained, and I'll kind of get some things where I'll make some comparisons, but for the most part here, we have Audrey, portrayed by Somias, who is she is being interrogated by Detective Ramos, portrayed by Graff, and Detective Collins, portrayed by Makoma. And then Captain Phelps, who is portrayed by Marks Mitchell, he is bringing them information. So this won't be for everybody. If you enjoy films with solid acting, this is something I would say check out. It's dialogue heavy, though. It's merely in this interrogation room. We do see there is the room behind the one-way mirror, and Captain Phelps' office late. So if you're bored by films that focus on back and forth conversations between characters, then I would recommend avoiding this one. But it's something akin to like 12 Angry Men or like Nefarious. So this relies on good acting, which it delivers. I appreciated the detective's varied interrogation styles in questioning Audrey, who displays a compelling and emotional range from distraught upon your arrival to anger when she realizes that she's Collins' prime suspect. Ramos remains undecided, seeking all the facts. Audrey exploits this by offering misleading information, effectively building tension as the detective's frustration mounts over time. So we have some interesting byproducts here as well. Audrey inquires that she believes the detectives are having an affair. This bothers Collins. There are multiple times that she points out that she's missing time with her children, and she's also married. This sparks her to make a drastic change. This shakes both men. Ramos feels betrayed, and then Phelps doesn't understand. He is fine with the idea, though, if she can succeed in getting this confession before pretty much the morning. Phelps is also interesting here as the detectives keep discussing, progress with him, and he continues more evidence to help aid them in their interrogation. Let's then shift over to the acting performances, since this is what carries it. Somias is a strong lead, initially the prime suspect or a prime witness who found the family, but then it becomes increasingly trustworthy to become that prime suspect. A late reveal with a captivating twist kind of makes everything kind of fall into place there. Makoma and Graff are well cast as the detectives, with Collins immediately suspicious and Ramos more cautious. Their contrasting personalities deepen the story. Mitchell effectively provides information for the interrogation. And also give credit here to James David West, who shows up right there at the end, and he is portraying Audrey's husband of Oliver. There's also a dispatcher here who is Ashley M. Moore. We get to hear her voice. So then all that's left to be some filmmaking aspects. The best part here is to build tension, even though the action that we're seeing is limited. Part of this would be the stress of the interrogation. The captain needs the detectives to get a confession before morning, especially with how important the victims are. That's a piece there that I wanted to include. The tension is that if a lawyer shows up, that could end everything. They use their limited sets well. The cinematography and framing were solid. The limited effects of blood and dirt on Audrey works. Other than that, the sound design and music help the mood. In conclusion, this is a compelling, dialogue-driven thriller that excels through strong performance and meticulous pacing. While the confined setting and heavy focus on conversation won't appeal to all viewers, those who appreciate tense, character-based dramas akin to like a 12 Angry Men will find a lot to unpack. The film successfully uses the pressure cooker environment of the interrogation room, aided by solid cinematography and sound design, to build genuine tension, keeping the audience engaged in this cat and mouse game to uncover the truth about Audrey and the massacre. Overall, this is a tight, suspenseful, independent feature that delivers a satisfying, complex twist. And my rating here for Where Silence Lies is a 7 out of 10. And I would keep an eye out to see if this is coming to a theater near you. If not, I would definitely, check this out on VOD if this sounds like it's up your alley. And up next here, I have a screener I got to check out of Capture. This is from 2026. It was written and directed by Bruce Wemple. This stars Caitlin Lenardi, Cedric Gegel, and Chris Zimmerman. And if I mispronounce some of your names, I do apologize. But this is a horror film that is from the United States. and it is not able yet to be rated on IMDb, and the same kind of thing over there on Letterboxd, with the synopsis being: after mysteriously inheriting her parents' house, a lifelong orphan finds a camcorder and a collection of videotapes containing the gruesome secrets of her family's past and the horrifying truth behind the camcorder that they captured on. So this one I got to see via screener thanks to Erica from Gold Dust PR. The poster and the bit of the press release did intrigue me. I'll be honest, it did look a little bit like a ghostly, a term for films that came out in the 2010s that were generic. I still like to come in with an open mind when possible, and so this one is a scouring through the sixes as well as a watch for 2026. So I'm going to start then is that this is interesting. It's also the second film that I've watched this year involving a cursed video camera. Both are independent productions, so I don't know if that's just a coincidence, but both use it in similar yet different ways. The concept of a cursed object, especially when it involves technology, is something I like. J-Horror did some interesting things with it, so I was intrigued to see what we would do here with the idea. Then to set up the story here, we have familiar tropes. We have an isolated house in the woods lacking cellular coverage. Abby, who doesn't have a car, is stranded, and she is portrayed by Lenardi. And actually, what's kind of interesting here is she's a foster sister to Steve and to her other sister. Her sister is Laura. So what's interesting here, like I was saying, is that Abby was adopted, and she really wants to find out about her parents. Steve is a private investigator, and he actually found a lead, and this led to an attorney who brought them together, and she found out that there was a house that she was left. And so then her parents are going to be Jason, portrayed by Grant Schumacher, and then Abby also plays her mother in this, Cameron, who is, playing her hair. So, like I said, we have some familiar tropes here. Abby doesn't have a car. This is our large, solitary house that's creepy out in the middle of the woods. Abby's also an alcoholic, and with the withdrawals, it's indicated by her shaky hands, but her determination to learn about her parents keeps her from leaving prematurely. Leonardo does a great job in her performance, and added credit for playing the character of her mother. So let's look at the haunting aspects then. We have a figurative demons here that Abby is dealing with which is her addiction. She doesn't seem to fit in with her family, being that she's adopted as part of that. She also seems like she brings on critiques with some of the decisions she makes. Steve does love and wants to help her. There's also, when she discovers this cursed camera, there's this window that is open for her to learn about her parents and her past, even though there's danger for what it harbors and able to do. And what I mean there is that if the camera is on, it can actually create almost like a portal to hell, or at least ghosts can kind of come through. I do like how this builds tension and atmosphere. So then that should be enough for the story. Let's go over to the acting performances. I've already said that Lenardi was solid. She takes on dual roles here, and she shows some good fear. The drive to learn about where she came from is good, but I also like seeing the elements of her destructive personality. Gegel works as her sibling who loves her. He might be trying to help a little too much. Simperman works as this guy who seems nice, and that also kind of comes to an end, though, when Abby is isolated. Schumacher, Leah Eckhart, Lee John Woods, and the rest of the cast are on the top for what was needed. All that's left to be some filmmaking. So in general, I do think this is well made. The cinematography and framing are solid. What I like best is that it's something revealed here with the camera. Abby walks around the house and sees a different form. It reminds me of like Silent Hill, how you have like the normal and then like the darker version. The effects we got were solid. I'm guessing there was some CGI. I didn't really have any major issues there. What they did with the practical ones looked good. Other than that, I think that the music was eerie at times, and what they did with the sound design worked. In conclusion, my biggest critique is that this isn't a lot of originality to the concept. It borrows heavily from J-horror staples like Ringu and Ju-on, and the isolated house setting is overly familiar. However, the film successfully overcomes these shortcomings through its solid character work and commitment to building a palpable atmosphere. Rather than relying solely on jump scares, the dual performance by Lenardi is compelling, and director Bruce Wemple manages to weave the figurative demons of addiction and family history into this literal supernatural threat with commendable skill. Ultimately, this is well-crafted, moody, and character-driven piece of independent horror that proves a solid entry so far for 2026. So my rating here, though, I actually give Capture a 6.5 out of 10, and this should be hitting VOD here soon if you are interested. And then for my last feature here I'm going to be covering is going to be very brief here because I watched Friday the 13th, the original one from 1980. This is directed by Sean S. Cunningham. This was written between Victor Miller and Ron Kurz. This is starring Betsy Palmer, Adrienne King, and Janine Taylor. This is a B-horror, slasher, splatter, suspense, mystery, teen, whodunit, mystery thriller film that's from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd, with the synopsis being: a group of teenage camp counselors attempt to reopen an abandoned summer camp with a tragic past, but they are stalked by a mysterious, relentless killer. So this one I've watched a handful of times throughout the different years and everything like that. I know I have the Blu-ray box set and everything. So the last time I actually covered this would have been on bonus episode 13, where Jamie, I got her to watch the original as well as part 2. So if you'd like to hear a little bit more about my thoughts over there, I'll direct you to that. So I mean, officially I haven't really covered it on the episode outside of all of that type of information here. I know I've covered it on Letterboxd a few different times, so I'll direct you over there if you want to read more of my written review. But so this one, like I said, commentary track from the Blu-ray. Something I wanted to point out was this was recorded around 2003, because there was a reference about how Freddy vs. Jason was in production. What I will say is, though, I was glad this was ported over. So this is a non-traditional commentary moderated by Peter M. Brackey, something like that, the author of Crystal Lake Memories. So this pieces together interview clips rather than featuring a live group discussion. This results in comments occasionally referencing scenes later or doing things that are said and then that scene's already passed. However, the track's strength relies on including voices like Sean S. Cunningham, Adrian King, Victor Miller, Harry Manfredini, and the late Betsy Palmer, whose contribution is valuable to preserve since she has passed. Even though I don't care for how this was constructed, there's some still valuable information here. Hearing Cunningham tell about how he and Miller constructed this was interesting. Learning that Miller did children's films before agreeing to this. He didn't like horror, and the deaths that were written come from nightmares that he had. That was interesting. You know, hearing King, who was a newcomer to acting, as opposed to Palmer, who had a career long before this, and hearing her take from the backlash was intriguing. So a bit of new information was that before attempting a slasher on the heels of Halloween, if you wanted to make a film outside of Hollywood, porn was probably the route you went. That explains why Wes Craven did what he did after The Last House on the Left, which Cunningham, I believe, was a part of both those productions. So overall, despite this being a segmented nature of commentary, it serves as an excellent historical record, providing essential context and background on the film's creation and its initial reception. The blend of voices from key creative and acting personnel make this a worthwhile listen for fans and an interesting, in the behind-the-scenes reality of this genre defining horror film. So my rating here then for this commentary track, I actually give it a 7 out of 10 just because of the historical significance, even though I think I would have went higher if it would have been an actual one that is following the film as they go. Then I have this documentary of The Nightmare from 2015. This is directed by Rodney Asher, and this is featuring Stephen Joseph, Nicole Bosworth, and Siegfried Peters. Now, these are all people that are dealing with what this is about. So this is a documentary horror that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.7 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd, where our synopsis being a look at a frightening condition that plagues thousands, sleep paralysis. So yeah, these are all people that are dealing with this. So this is a documentary that follows people who experience this condition. It's frightening. I've never experienced it personally, but I've had similar symptoms. When I can't sleep, I tend to go into a little bit of a panic. Not being able to sleep for long stretches would be terrifying. So this condition also seems to have inspired different forms of art, from like paintings to films, including A Nightmare on Elm Street. It popped on my radar years ago thanks to podcasts, and it's also one of the highest rated ones that is considered to also fall in the horror genre, so I decided to check this one out. So this is the first introduced to the participants. We learn about them as how they first started to experience this phenomenon. Some of them had it when they were as young as 3, others not until they were in adulthood, and actually one, I believe, started it because of a significant other who also experienced this. We get to see their interviews, and this also has reenactments of them playing out. That gets a little bit cheesy, but regardless, what they're talking about is scary. What really stuck with me was how interesting the different perspectives are these people have and how they eerily match up. There is even one that claims to have seen entities that looked like aliens. What I don't know is how did he correlate them to look that way originally? Or did his mind fill it in? Because that's something we have a lot of times is with perception. I do find it interesting that this condition could explain paintings of having like a demon sit on your chest. It could also be attributed to how some cats sleep and, kind of the correlation there. It also is a potential explanation for alien abductions, being paralyzed and having vivid nightmares. I did want to say that the explanations across the board is I don't have enough information to refute anything they're saying, and having not experienced it, that's also part of it. Hearing and seeing what I have, it seems more like a logical explanations out there. your mind kind of playing tricks on you. Not sleeping can cause different weird things to happen. A possibility is also that our mind just hears and stores things, even if we don't explicitly remember, and it kind of fills in what it knows, just aspects that I wanted to include here. Now, what I will say is that this is made well enough. The people interviewed are convinced of what they saw and experienced. The cinematography, framing, editing is all good, and this made it enjoyable enough. To watch their interviews and giving us reenactments, it makes it a little bit livelier. On the whole, this is a slower, more deliberate pace. Not all the effects for the reenactments were good. I can also be a bit forgiving since what we're kind of seeing might not actually be real, and there is obviously no footage to kind of back it up. So in conclusion, this succeeds as a chilling, insightful look at a terrifying world of sleep paralysis. By weaving together personal accounts, psychological theories, and cultural history, the documentary offers a compelling, albeit unsettling, logical explanation for phenomena that have haunted humanity for centuries. While the pacing is slow and some of the effects are dated, the sheer terror conveyed by the participants and the eerie commonality of their experiences make this a must-watch for everybody interested in this intersection of horror, physiology, and the subconscious mind. So my rating here for The Nightmare, I gave this one a 7 out of 10, and I believe I checked this out on Prime Video. It's also on Tubi if you are curious. And that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Can anybody help me? Please. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. Please. Help. Help. What happened?
You had an accident.
An accident, huh?
We dug you up, then we brought you back to life.
Get on stage, and I call her by her first name.
What did you want with a dead girl?
I'm the same, born from the dead. I am a monster.
Yeah, so am I.
This world is a black hole.
The corrupt are going to see life is here and it's coming to you from the monsters.
Yes! Yes!
Everybody dance! Everybody sing! Everybody move!
Please don't hurt me, please. I'm sorry.
What are you sorry for? Did you do something wrong? Something you thought you might get away with?
Stop right there!
Screaming my name.
The dead have got something to say. And I'm saying it.
The bride of Frankenstein.
No, just the bride. Scared?
And for my first featured review here is going to be The Bride from 2026. This is written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, also inspired by Mary Shelley's novel of Frankenstein. And then this is starring Jessie Buckley, Christian Bale, and Penelope Cruz, while also featuring here Annette Bening, Peter Sarsgaard, Jake Gyllenhaal, John Magaro, Matthew Mayer, Janine Berlin, Zlato Burick, Louis Cancelme, Julianne Hogue, Hessel Morden, Anthony Abato, Neil Vincent Smith, Lydia Kelly, Tennessee King, and Ethan Dubin. Now, this here, there's a lot of genres and subgenres and everything like that, but this is a dark comedy, dark romance, period drama, psychological drama, horror, romance, sci-fi film, also horror, if I did not include that in there, and this is a co-production between the United States and France. It is currently sitting on a 6.1 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: in 1930 Chicago, Frankenstein, as Dr. Euphorianus, To help create a companion, they give life to a murdered woman known as the Bride, sparking romance, police interest, and radical social change. So this is one that I had heard about, and the more I learned, the more I got intrigued. What I'd heard is that Gyllenhaal was going to write and direct this take of The Bride of Frankenstein. I was curious to see what they would do with it. Now, these Universal classics are kind of hit or miss for me. What I learned was that Jessie Buckley was going to be the bride, so that added to it. I was able to catch this in the theater for the opening night at the Gateway Film Center, and of course, I am making it here a featured review. I'll go ahead and I didn't include this earlier, but Frankenstein's monster, they're just calling him Frankenstein for the most part in this, and that's what I'm going to do going forward, but he is portrayed by Bale. And then this Dr. Euphorius is going to be portrayed by Annette Bening. And then we also, like I said, the bride is going to be Buckley. And so let's start with our featured notes here with our director here of Maggie Gyllenhaal. She has done this for 3 features and 1 short. This is the first time venturing into horror. Now, first of the stuff that she's done that I've seen, there are 2 assistant directors. First can be David Webb. He has 39 movies and 1 short in this role. I've seen 11. Not horror. He did Joker, Argo, and Milk. Now, he did this for 2 horror films. He did the U.S. remake of Dark Water and now this, and I've seen both. So the other one is going to be Ryan Robert Howard. He did this for 9 motion pictures. This is the second works of his that I've seen. With the first one that I saw was Happy Gilmore 2, only one he's done in a genre. Then our writer here of Gyllenhaal, she has done this for 2 films and 1 short. First of the things she's done that I've seen, only one she's done in horror. And I'm also going to give credit here to the original writer of Shelley. I'm sure I brought her up at some point. So she's done 70. There's been 75 features and 14 shorts adapted from her works. I've seen 37 for 49%. 60 of what she's done are in genre. I've seen 35 for 58%. Top 3 that I'm missing is this story here for the National Theater Live. There's Frankenstein's Army and Frankenstein Conquers the World as the other ones that are the top 3 that I'm missing. So now to our cast. Buckley has been in 27 features and 8 shorts. I've seen her in 2 things, both of what she's done in horror, this and the movie Men. Her co-star of Bale has been in 68 movies and 8 shorts. I've seen him in 16. Not horror, he was in like Nolan's Batman trilogy, The Prestige, and The Big Short. Has done 3 in genre. I've seen them all now. Those are American Psycho, The Pale Blue Eye, and now this. Let's look at Maggie's brother of Jake. He's been in 64 motion pictures and 4 shorts. Not horror, he's been in Prisoners, Zodiac, and Spider-Man Far From Home. Those first 2, though, are almost horror movies, but they're not quite going far enough. I've seen 18 of his stuff total. He's done 3 in horror. I have now seen them all with this, Life and Velvet Buzzsaw. And I also kind of think Donnie Darko has some dark elements that almost makes that a horror film too, as well. So then I also want to give credit here to Bening. She's been in 62 features and 1 short. I've only seen 4 things with her, which is kind of surprising. Not horror, that would be like American Beauty and Captain Marvel. Has done 2 in genre with this and a movie called In Dreams from 1999, which I have not seen that one as of yet. All right, then, let's jump into this movie here. And this opens up with a shadowed Mary Shelley, who's also portrayed by Buckley. Now, it seems like she's in limbo, and she has decided it's time for her to reveal the untold parts of her work, which she couldn't express due to the era that it was originally written and everything and when she lived. So she ends up possessing Ida, who's also portrayed by Buckley. Now, she is drunkenly at a restaurant with James, portrayed by Mayer, and then Clyde, who's portrayed by Magaro, amongst other people at their table. So Shelley's possession causes Ida to lash out, say some things she probably shouldn't have, and some of these are being directed towards a mobster of Lupino, portrayed by Burek. Now, he wants her dead. It then shifts over to the institute belonging to Dr. Cornelia Euphorianus. Now, waiting on her is Dr. Frankenstein's monster, or just Frankenstein's monster. She is intrigued by him and asks him to stay so she can run some tests. It is then during their interaction that it's revealed why he's here. She is the closest living person to doing the work that his creator had done. He wants her to bring a mate back from the dead for him. There are disagreements, but ultimately she does kind of agree to help out, just at least to see if she can do it. They go to a cemetery and dig up a pauper's grave, oddly enough belonging to Ida. So Frankenstein has second thoughts as the experiment approaches. When Ida wakes up, she is then referred to as the bride. She doesn't remember much from her past. She wants to go out and have fun, to which Frankenstein is happy to escort her. They go to like the movies because he is in love with this actor of Ronnie Reed, portrayed by Jake Gyllenhaal, and he does like musicals and stuff. He's supposed to be like a Fred Astaire type guy. And then they also get kicked out of there, though, for being loud. Though this leads them to a city nightclub where they encounter men working for Lupino. As the bride is dancing very provocatively, she has some men that are dancing with her. She's enjoying herself until they get a little bit too handsy. So Frankenstein steps in to protect her, leaving the 2 men dead. They flee, catching a train to New York City. So the detectives investigating what happened are Myron Molly, portrayed by Malloy, something like that, portrayed by Cruz, and then her partner is Jake Wiles, portrayed by Peter Sarsgaard. So they're on their trail when Myron notices a pattern. Frankenstein is a massive fan, like I was saying, of Ronnie Reed. This helps give them a place to start and a way to track them. There's something that nobody is expecting. The bride's crimes are inspiring women to fight back against the patriarch, creating a revolution that could change everything. So that's really my recap and arches of the characters. Where I want to start is that I highly recommend this one in the theater just because it's visually amazing. It's kind of bumming me out to hear that this is bombing. I can kind of see where some people are going to have issues with this one because it's very art house. It doesn't necessarily fully know what it wants to do, but just some of the things that I kind of want to bring up. But so this one is not a remake necessarily of the 1930s movie or even the novel. So if you're looking for something like that, I would kind of avoid this. It's Gyllenhaal's unique, fantastical interpretation of the material, blurring the lines between reality for the viewer and the characters, and I appreciate the vision though. Now that set up, let's look at Buckley's character, which is the most fascinating for me. And I mean, all across the board, all of her characters are fascinating. Ida, who is the possessed by Shelley pre-mortem, exhibits exorcist-like outbursts, upsetting Lupino and contributing to her death. Ironically, her grave is chosen for the experiment. Ida's free spirit translates to the bride. So Buckley seamlessly transitioned between these three variations, capturing the stressful volatility of the character's thoughts, and just like her outbursts and stuff are just so off the wall that it almost seems like she's got Tourette's. And let's look at Frankenstein then. Blurring the lines of Shelley's novel with a seemingly basis in realism, suggesting that a real doctor performed the experiment and added a meta element. So, lonely, Frankenstein seeks out this Dr. Euphoriousness for helping to create a bride. As the time for the experiment approaches, fear of rejection, which is a core plot point of the original movie, grows for him. Though initially uninterested, the bride falls in love with Frankenstein as they escape and go on the run together. It's heartwarming yet unsettling due to the quick change of heart that the bride seems to have at different times. So it's also this film, let's do some social commentary here. Some toxic masculinity is a big thing this is exploring. A subject that may deter some viewers because I know it's something that is a point that people are getting a little bit tired of. When it's done well, though, I'm all there for it. I think this exemplifies this by hiding the truth from the bride, and that would be the Frankenstein monster character, seemingly caught in the moment wanting to preserve their relationship. Dr. Wiles shows a similar trait, but uses it more for personal gain. The most egregious would be example like Lupino and the police. Now, the police are largely ignoring Myron until Jake intervenes, even though she might be the better detective. How it is handled here is realistic and well done in my opinion. So I just want to shift here and finish out some of the other themes, would be including like the dynamics of power, identity, and the female experience. There's a great element here of the bride quoting Herman Melville's Bartleby the Scrivener. I think it might be how you say that word. I believe I read this in high school actually though originally. The bride uses the line "I would rather not." She pushes her agency and autonomy. The bride inspires feminine rage and resistance. I also like that the bride chooses She chooses to be Frankenstein's companion. She isn't here to cure his loneliness except on her terms. These are all well done. Before moving from the story completely, I did want to look at the surreal element when it comes to the monsters. There is a performative identity here. Frankenstein is obsessed with Ronnie, the actor. He loves the dance sequences in this actor's films. There's a great scene where one seems to be happening, but is it real or is it not? Reflecting, I do feel like there's some elements here where the monsters have performative identity versus their true nature. It's kind of funny because one of the more epic debates I've had with my buddy Robert was that how he points out that we wear masks when we're around certain people, so we kind of give our version of ourselves to them, and this is kind of falling right in line with what he's talking about here. Let's look at the acting performances. And I've already said how Buckley and Bale, they're really great for what they're doing. How they bring their characters to life and the depth that they add to it is great. Interesting here is that Frankenstein's monster is such a tragic figure normally. This brings that, but it also makes some shades of gray with the crimes they commit to continue to be free. I think Benning, Sarsgaard, and Cruz are all great for what was needed as well. I also say that Gyllenhaal, Janine Berlin, Magaro, Mayer, Burek, and the rest of the cast, including Julianne Hogue, which I didn't even know she was in this. There's also a cameo here by Olivia Ludacari, and I think everybody really kind of just rounds out for what was needed. So all that's left before I do some trivia is going to be the filmmaking elements, which I also think this is where this excels. Cinematography and framing are effectively capturing Chicago and New York, this period with authentic sets and costumes. The surreal elements like dance numbers, changing movie screen images were enjoyable regardless of their reality. The effects were great, providing a realistic, natural Frankenstein look similar to the 1994 version with some subtle nods here to the 1930s Bride. If there is some CGI enhancing the visuals, they were handled well, and the area-appropriate music perfectly fits the atmosphere that they're kind of going for there as well. All right, there's some trivia here. There are some visual homages to Fritz Lang's Metropolis. Bridget Helm, who is Maria in that, was the inspiration for The Bride and then was considered by James Whale for the part of The Bride of Frankenstein, but she turned it down. Gyllenhaal had previously directed Jessie Buckley in The Lost Daughter, which was Gyllenhaal's feature film directorial debut. Buckley's performance in that earned her first Academy Award nomination. This contains some homages to Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. When the monster and the bride are both dancing together, the song that are dancing to is Puttin' on the Ritz. Bale shouts out Puttin' on the Ritz in the same manner that Peter Boyle did in Young Frankenstein. Gyllenhaal cast a real-life husband, Skarsgård, for a major role. That is that detective there. So this is taking inspiration from the 35 version of Bride of Frankenstein, which was inspired by Frankenstein creator Mary Shelley's 1818 novel. It even opens up with Buckley, who plays the bride, playing Mary Shelley, informing the audience that what they're in for, much as Elsa Lanchester did 91 years ago in the opening of The Bride of Frankenstein. There's some 2 Academy Award winners here, Bale and Cruise, and 4 nominees, which would be Buckley, Gyllenhaal, Benning, and Berlin. Christian Bale portrays Dr. Frankenstein's monster. His youngest child, Joseph, also known as Rex, will have a small part. Joseph/Rex previously had a small part in Thor: Love and Thunder, which his father also starred in there. Bale and Gyllenhaal previously worked in The Dark Knight. The 2 characters actually mispronounce Marlene Dietrich's surname differently. It's kind of something to keep in mind there. Bale was also under much stress during the endless sessions where he screamed, shouted nearly all the time because he did not want to be alone in distress. He asked the whole crewmen, makeup girls, whoever, to kind of do this as well. Gyllenhaal and Skarsgård previously were in Jarhead, Rendition, The Guilty, and Presumed Innocence together. And a headline reads, Twisted Sisters, Rage Against the Machine. Twisted Sister and Rage Against the Machine are named 2 musical bands. And Buckley and Skarsgård previously were in The Lost Daughter, also directed by Gyllenhaal. So then in conclusion, Maggie Gyllenhaal has created a visually stunning and thematically rich reimagining of the classic Universal monster story. It excels due to the deeply committed performances by Buckley and Bale, who inject complexity and tragic shades of gray into their roles by merging the 1930s setting with surrealist elements and a sharp exploration of modern themes such as identity, autonomy, and toxic masculinity. The film successfully transforms the source material into a unique, fantastical commentary on female experience. It is a bold, ambitious vision that, while not adhering strictly to the previous iterations, offers a memorable, thought-provoking cinematic experience that I highly recommend. Even though it does seem to be, struggling, and this month I think is just going to struggle to find the right audience at times. But for me, I thought The Bride was great. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Excited to revisit this one for end of my year list. So I'm going to go ahead and do, though, I'm not going to do a spoiler section. Don't necessarily need to do anything additional there at this time. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
We all have fantasies. Only some we don't admit to. Even policemen. But murder is no fantasy, however fantastic.
The women of Dublin should be on their guard against a very persuasive stranger.
Hello there.
If innocence is a fantasy, finding the guilty is an obsession.
Danny. Is that you?
He wants to stop the killing. That's his fantasy. That's his problem. Only he won't admit it. A policeman, a painting, a phone call, a woman.
Patricia, I think you could help me. For that reason, if for no other, you should beware of Danny Sullivan, Miss Daly.
Desire or obsession. Victim or murderer.
I love you, Patricia.
Innocence or guilt.
Oh, it's your turn to worry, Patricia. Sleep on that if you can.
A new motivation for murder, which has no motive, except for a fantasy. The Fantasist.
And for my second featured review here is going to be The Fantasist. I think it might be how you say that. And this is from 1986. It is written and directed by Robin Hardy, but this is based on a novel by Patrick McGinley. This stars Moira Sinise, Christopher Canzanovi, and Timothy Bottoms, while also here having the likes of John Kavanagh, Mick Lally, Barberini Chohman, Jim Bartley, Deandra Donnelly, Liam O'Callahan, Ronan Wilmont, May Giles, C. Ledwidge, Gabriella Reddy, Agnes Bernelli, Seamus Ford, Derek Halligan, Virginia Cole, and Sean Rafferty. This is a drama thriller. This goes into horror for me, and I mean, I would even say light giallo elements, but I'll kind of come back to that. But this film is from a co-production of Ireland and the United Kingdom, currently sitting on a 5.0 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a young Dublin woman is stalked by a telephone charmer who poses victims nude and then stabs them. So this is one that I found when I was looking for horror films from Ireland, as I was looking for one that ended in the year of 6, for my scouring through the 6s. So this one fit the bill, and I decided to make a featured review here in celebration of St. Patrick's Day, since this is an Irish horror film. So I did come to this one blind, just kind of knowing the title and that I could watch it on Tubi. So let's do some featured notes, though, and I didn't even make this click until I was doing this here, is that our director of Hardy has done 3 films and 3 shorts. He most famously did The Wicker Man, which I have seen. Everything that he's done in genre for features, which I mean there is that all of his films are considered to be horror, at least according to Letterboxd. And the only one that I'm missing right now is the follow-up to his classic of The Wicker Tree. So as a writer, he has done this for 3 features. 2 were in horror, with this and The Wicker Tree. Now, the original writer of the novel was McGinley. There are 2 adaptations of his work. This is the only one that I've seen, only one in genre. Moving to our cast here, our star of Sinise, she is actually married to Gary Sinise. She's been in 11 movies. I've seen 3. Not horror, she was in Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and the movie Breakdown with Kurt Russell. This is the only one that she's done that's considered in genre. Then her co-star of Casanova. He's been in 40 motion pictures and 1 short. I've seen him in A Knight's Tale, which isn't in genre. He has done 3 in horror. I have not seen Children of the Full Moon or In Possession. Last is going to be Bottoms. He's put together an interesting little career. He's been in 101 features. I've seen 5. Not horror. He was, I believe, the friend of the family who is in the strip club with the main character, Emil Hirsch, over there. And that's going to be in The Girl Next Door. But he's also in the documentary about Canon Electric Boogaloo. He's done 13 horror movies. I've seen 3 with Invaders from Mars remake, The Shed, and now this. Top 3 that I'm missing are going to be Uncle Sam, Parasomnia, and In the Shadow of Kilimanjaro. All right, let's jump into this movie here. And the story opens in Dublin, where we have a shot of the docks and brick buildings. Inside of one is Kathy O'Malley, portrayed by Reddy. She receives a threatening phone call, soon followed by her murder. It then shifts to the countryside, where we're introduced to a recent college grad of Patricia Teeling, portrayed by Sinise. Now, her uncle is Lar, portrayed by Lally. Now, he wants her to take over the family farm, though Patricia has plans where she's going to live in Dublin and teach for a year first. Now, the murder of Kathy is actually intercut between this, as we're seeing these scenes at the Teeling house over dinner. Now, we then see Patricia during her first week of teaching. Now, there's a Robert Foxley, portrayed by Kavanagh. He is a colleague who invites her out for a drink. It is here that we learn that she's looking for an apartment to rent. We see that she has some skills at drinking as she downs a glass of beer. I believe it's a Guinness. But then Patricia has to leave as she has to look at a flat. It's here that we meet Monica Quigley, portrayed by Chowman. Now, these 2 get along well, and they come to terms where she is going to live here with Monica. It's actually quite weird. They actually share the bed and everything, as this is a 1-bedroom. She can't afford it by herself. But yeah. So Patricia settles into life into Dublin, and she goes out dancing where a guy gets a little too aggressive. She seeks help from another guy of Danny Sullivan, portrayed by Bottoms. Patricia goes on a date with Robert where he drinks too much and things get weird. She also meets her downstairs neighbor, who is Finola, portrayed by Donnelly. Now, what she doesn't end up realizing until a little bit after this is that this woman is married to Danny, so Danny is actually her downstairs neighbor. Now, the 2 develop an odd relationship that is flirty, with Patricia keeping him at a distance. So the murder of Kathy isn't the first in this style. It also isn't the last. Finola is then killed, and it makes Danny a suspect. The inspector who's really kind of in charge here is McMyler, portrayed by Casanova, as he is one of the men, and I was saying there, there's 2 other guys that he's working with here. Patricia takes a liking to him as well. Now, she's torn, as she went to visit Danny while he was house sitting, and caught him making a prank call to his wife, and then he claimed, well, at least claimed it was to her. But it does kind of line up to what Kathy relayed before she was killed. So there's also turmoil at the family farm. When the killer starts to call Patricia, she must figure out what she can do before it is too late. So let's leave my recap direction of the characters. What I want to start is by saying that for a good stretch, I wondered if this was going to be horror. The crime isn't even the catalyst event for the story. It's more of like a drama, seeing this woman kind of live in this like modern city when she's kind of from the country and everything like that. But it turns into a thriller the longer we go. That's where the shades of like this being like an Irish giallo come in. Now, the only reason I consider is that we have a murder mystery with our killer having a distinct perversion. I don't truly consider it to be in that subgenre, but it flirts with the elements. Let's then look at our lead character here, Patricia. Now, she's a recent college grad who declines her uncle's offer to run his farm initially. She wants to teach in Dublin for a year, and he actually agrees with it and thinks it's a good idea. The problem is that while she's gone, she starts to hang out with a uncle who I believe, let me see if I can figure out what his name is real quick, because he was the guy that he's hanging out with, Jim Bartley. The thing with him is that he is an alcoholic, and he kind of makes Largo down a rough little patch there. But then while Patricia's living in Dublin, she's courted by like Robert, Danny, and even a little bit of Inspector McMyler. Each one have their own quirks, forcing her to decide on what are the deal breakers for her. A notable interaction occurs when Monica, who asks if Patricia is a virgin while showing the apartment. So Monica had her last roommate who became sexually active while they were living together, so it got quite awkward for her. So Patricia's more subdued, and it actually sparks curiosity in Monica to ask questions. So Sini's portrayal of this like conservative modern woman was good. I then want to shift over to discussing the male suitors. A good element is showing that each of them have their own oddities, which is realistic. Robert does outrageous things at a fancy dinner, and to end the night, it makes it awkward when he wants to rub Patricia's stomach, since this is what his mother did to soothe him when he was a child. So Danny is flirtatious and fun. The problem is that he's married when they first meet. That doesn't stop him from putting on his moves. Inspector McMyler comes around much later and it's more when Danny is the prime suspect as a killer. Underneath his charm lies a more peculiar nature that is creepy. Let's then shift over to Kathy's murder. Now, we saw parts of it, and then from there, it's subtly handled with like background news reports. So that crime isn't even the central to Patricia's life initially. It almost offers like a meta commentary here on the proximity of crime is ignored until it directly impacts us. So the change, though, comes when Finola is actually targeted, because obviously she lives in the same building. And this is where I think the giallo elements start to really kind of grow. And then this is where Patricia, she becomes more suspicious and noticing odd behavior from both Danny and Robert. Also, she kind of notices like deviant acts that can make anybody a suspect. And they aren't the only ones either. So other key elements here that I want to kind of include, and I mean, I guess these are more themes actually, is we're kind of shifting Patricia from this rural innocence to the urban isolation in Dublin, highlighting like neighborly anonymity as well. The killer who recites poetry over the phone represents the duality of the artist and the predator. The victim's method of killing involves voyeurism as the killer watches Kathy before her death. Ultimately, repression and sexual fantasy, another potential influence from giallo, motivate the killer's actions. Let's then look at the acting performances. Sinise carries this. She is the focus, so that would make sense, as this is kind of like a character study of her, I would say. Seeing her navigate life in the city and managing male suitors who enter her life works well. The best performance outside of her, though, would be Bottoms. He's such an oddball that reminds me of myself at times. Casanova and Kavanaugh are both good for these characters who have a bit more deviance the more we learn about them. Lally and her family work to put pressure on Patricia. I'd also say that Chowman, Donnelly, and the rest of the cast around the software was needed. So then let's look at the filmmaking aspects, and I think they're good, as we have some interesting experimental cinematography and framing. There's actually a shot here that reminded me a lot of Tenebrae, which would have came out earlier in the decade, so that could have been an influence here. But the contrast between countryside and city effectively mirrors Patricia's duality. Limited yet practical special effects and an eerie phone call sound design contribute to the tone. The last thing to include would be the pacing. This is a slow burn that sets the stage for our lead before she becomes a target of the serial killer, so that could be an issue for some people. Some viewers just kind of want to make sure that I establish that here. So there's not a whole lot of trivia here, but the band in the nightclub is Level 42 playing their song Love Games. Sinise received an introducing credit as Moira Harris. Cyril Cusack was booked to appear but dropped out shortly before filming. Sinise, okay, we already know she was in this before she was married. Or she might have been married, not really sure there, but she went by her maiden name for this film. So this is Robin Hardy's first film since The Wicker Man, that was almost 20 years earlier, which is wild. And then this is Derval Kirwan's debut. Not sure who that person is offhand, so I apologize. But in conclusion, this is a compelling 1986 Irish thriller that transcends a simple horror label, offering a nuanced character character study of Patricia Teeling as she navigates urban life and its perils. While a slow burn pace may challenge some, the film is rich with thematic elements, from the contrast between rural innocence and city anonymity to the exploration of repression and sexual fantasy, reminiscent of Italian giallo genre. Anchored by a strong performance from Sinise and supported by unsettling presence of Bottoms, director Robin Hardy utilizes evocative cinematography and sound design to craft an atmosphere of creepy menace. Ultimately, it succeeds as a psychological thriller that intelligently uses a serial killer plot as a device to scrutinize the anxieties and emergent anonymity of its female lead. So my rating here, then, I actually give this one a 7 out of 10. Rather enjoyed it. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's nothing that I need to necessarily do there to kind of delve anything deeper. So let me go ahead then and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jittery an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in, and Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash, fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode, I'm going to be going back to doing my Centennial Club episodes here, where the featured reviews over there. So I've already watched Undertone. That one is all ready to go and everything like that. I got to check that out on opening night. And then I'll be pairing that up with The Student of Prague from 1926. What I think my through line here is going to be, when I was looking at it, is we have a movie that focuses on sound as a major component, especially for the horror elements. And I'm going to pair that up with a silent film that doesn't necessarily have anything that was officially synced up with it. Student of Prague might have a soundtrack that was intended to go with it. I will figure that out before I, get that episode done. And then I'm going to be watching The Little Shop of Horrors. That's going to be my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch, the remake from 86. And then, as I'm actually into the 80s now. And then I have some movies that I'm going to be doing here that I got some screeners in. I'm hoping to do all 3 of them. I will see what I can do there, fitting in time-wise and everything. I also have a documentary that's a screener, so we'll see what I can figure out and do there. And I've also checked out Repo. That one's one I started after getting home from watching Undertone, so that'll also be featured on there as well. So I don't think there's anything else I need to say here for this outro except saying... that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending